did the board adopted as the reserve fund?
Actually, Your Honors, as you can see from Section 11, the requirement of actuarial estimate is only required for the ceiling,
Yes.
not the reserve fund. So, where the actuary participated here was in setting the ceiling.
Yes, but you said earlier, you have 220 billion excess. Your expenditures is accumulated revenues is 500 billion. The reserve fund is 280, and you still have 220 billion free funds. Why did the board merely agree or set the reserve fund 50% of the recommended amount?
The board has that discretion, Your Honor, to review the data and set the reserve fund to, or even the ceiling to reasonable levels. Yeah.
Okay, now, earlier it was mentioned that the reserve fund for 2024 was, as recommended, was determined on the last day of 2023. When, am I correct? Yes. Now, when did the board adopted the reserve fund for 2024 in the amount of 280 billion? Was it supposed to be the beginning of the year of 2024 or any time as long as it is within the year 2024? Is there a board?
Your Honors, may I surmise an opinion, or I don't know how they call it. I think this is in response to the GAA provision and the DOF circular when the discussion on the 280 was discussed in the board, Your Honor.
No, you mentioned that you made a recommendation in the end of 2023 that the reserve fund for 2024 should be 560B, right? And I presume the board were sufficiently informed of this amount. When did the board of PhilHealth acted upon this amount to determine that the reserve fund should only be 280 billion? There should be at least a board resolution that would say that the reserve fund of PhilHealth is 280 billion.
I think the board acted around middle of last year, Your Honor. But yeah, by the way, previous to that, Your Honor, the board did not really, as I understand, I'm not really part of the management of PhilHealth, but the board never really formalized any level of reserve fund. So they simply followed an office order that was issued in 2012, where they set the reserve fund equal to or lower than the ceiling.
Did I hear it right that the board did not actually made a reservation for purposes of this reserve fund?
No, in the past, Your Honor. But this is an info I'm getting from the board staff of PhilHealth, Your Honor. But the board meeting for this new reserve fund that was approved was held May 8, 2024.
Can you provide us with the necessary documents to show probably a board resolution that on May 8, 2024, the PhilHealth board adopted a reserve fund in the amount of 280 billion?
We'll do that, Your Honor.
Can I get that commitment?
Yes, certainly, Your Honor.
Okay.
We'll.
Now, when the 560 billion, you computed it, you base this on 2 years projected expenditures, right?
That's correct, Your Honor.
And on that basis, you came up with 560B.
That's correct, Your Honor.
And on that basis also, on May 8, the PhilHealth Board adopted a reserve fund 50% as you recommended.
As stated, Your Honor. Yes.
Now, let us go to, it was mentioned earlier that the amount requested by the Department of Finance, 89.9 billion, that was when it was sent to you that you need to transmit this amount. How did you go about it in PhilHealth? Was it immediately approved by PhilHealth? Did you have a discussion? What I mean is, under the GAA, it speaks of a reserve fund, right? Chapter GAA 2024, it speaks of reserve fund. In Section 11 of the Universal Healthcare also speaks of a reserve fund. Are these concepts the same or different from each other?
I think the reserve fund under the the Universal Healthcare Act, Your Honor, has its own definition in the law.
Yes. In fact, under the Section 11, the reserve fund shall not exceed a ceiling equivalent to the amount actuarially estimated for 2 years projected program expenditures.
Yes.
So therefore, looking forward.
But
In the GAA, the reserve fund must be reduced to a reasonable level, taking into account disbursement from prior years. So therefore, the reserve fund under the GAA speaks of expenditures for prior years. So it speaks, these two concepts are different.
no, not really different, Your Honor.
Why do you say that?
You look at your past needs to, in a way, have a good guess of your future needs.
Again,
So
sorry.
you look at how you look at your expenditures in the past to have a good estimate of your expenditures in the future.
Yes, that is the reserve fund for PhilHealth. You determine that by taking into consideration expenses projected for the next 2 years,
That's
which is
right.
necessarily, from experience, higher than expenditures for the past prior years. So therefore, the amounts for reserve fund, if you compute it under the PhilHealth, would be vastly different from the amount of reserve fund under the GAA. In that case, my question now is, how did you compute the amount if there are two different bases in determining the amount to be remitted to the Department of Finance?
I know they took the rolling 2-year average of the expenditures in the past, was it 5 years, Your Honor, from 2018 to 2023. They took the average of the rolling past 2 years.
Okay, now, when the GAA was passed, this provision on fund balance and the reserve fund, I'll read it to you. Fund balance of GOCCs from any remainder resulting from the review and reduction of that reserve fund to reasonable levels, taking into account the disbursement from prior years. So, under the GAA, they have to determine a reserve fund, right? And the reserve fund is determined by taking into consideration expenses for prior years, right? Okay. Now, when DOF sent you a request to send the money, 89.9 billion, how did you interpret this provision in the GAA vis-a-vis your own concept of reserve fund under Section 11?
They, PhilHealth, I know, has a manual of governance, Your Honor. So they went through a process pursuant to that manual. So one of the factors they considered is their absorptive capacity to spend. And that was based on the past years. I think they took the period from 2018 to 2023.
Who computed the amount of 89.9 billion?
That was the request from DOF, Your Honors.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah, so-
it was it from DOF that the amount of 89.9 billion came from?
I believe so, Your Honor. After
Okay.
they have determined that that 89.9 billion is outside the reserve fund. It will come from the fund.
Can I
balance.
get somebody from DOF to explain to the court how this 89.9 billion came from?
Your Honors, Deputy Treasurer Ed Marino from the Bureau of the Treasury, representing the Secretary of Finance
Okay.
in the Board of PhilHealth. The question is the calculation of the 89.9 billion.
How did you determine the 89.9 billion?
That is the unutilized subsidies as reflected in the unutilized government subsidies of PhilHealth for the years 2021 until 2023 as reflected in the financial statements of those years, Your Honor.
What do you mean by unutilized subsidy?
So in every year, Your Honor, from 2021 to 2023, there is a premium subsidy that was recorded in the financial statements of PhilHealth coming from the national government. And correspondingly, the accounting systems of PhilHealth can track the beneficiaries, the indirect contributor beneficiaries, where these subsidies must be used for. And we simply subtracted for each year the difference between the premium subsidies and the benefit expenses for indirect contributors.
So, since you contributed this much for 2021, 2022, 2023 representing subsidy from indirect contributors, those that were unspent or were not spent were taken back. That's what you're saying.
That is the basis of the 89.9 billion, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, however, under the GAA, this 89.9 billion, you will definitely tell me that this is part of the fund balance.
Yes, Your Honor. The 89.9 billion is part of the balance which is on top of the reserves, the reasonable reserves, Your Honor.
Yes. But under the circular, Department Circular 003/2024, there were guidelines that were provided for determining fund balance.
Yes, Your Honor.
Can you tell me where in these guidelines or what were the basis? Because in determining fund balance, it said here in 4.3, the reasonable level of reserve fund shall be computed by the DOF on a case-by-case basis, considering the following factors. It enumerated the factors, and I presume you know these factors. Now, you mentioned to me earlier that the amount 89.9 billion represents the balance of the subsidy. where in these guidelines or basis was the basis for taking up 89.9 representing this unspent subsidy?
Your Honor, I believe those one of the considerations highlighted there is the ability, is actually the spending capacity of PhilHealth, both in the past and the projected expenditures. So that is the primary basis. That is why we took a look at the financial statements of PhilHealth. Moreover, the fund balance takes the form of cash in bank, and other investment securities. So that's the form included in the circular, Your Honor.
Yes, but I went through this 4.3. I do not see the basis for taking the subsidy, the unspent subsidy, as the 89.9 billion. Do you have a copy of Department Circular?
Your Honor, if I may just get a copy. Sir, if I may, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Letter A of 4.3 states here, historical performance, including the absorptive capacity, which presents the actual financial performance versus the approved budget, regular and recurring operating expenses, including non-cash expenses, the legal claims and obligations, etc. Unutilized, and number K, unutilized subsidies and fund transfers for programs and projects, Your Honor.
So, by taking the unspent subsidy, you're referring to A and B?
Okay. So, the unutilized subsidy specifically is in K, 4.3K, Your Honor.
4.3K.
Yes.
Okay. So it refers to when you took the 89 point, when DFRS requested the 89.9, it represents the unutilized subsidies.
Yes, Your Honor.
When you speak of subsidies that were given to PhilHealth on 2021, 22, and 2023, why do you consider that unutilized? Because PhilHealth is a going concern. And in fact, I understand for 2025, no subsidy was allotted to PhilHealth. So why would you consider it to be unutilized subsidy?
Yes, Your Honor, if I may. Number one, for the past years, even for the years 2021, 2022, and 2023, PhilHealth consistently receives premium subsidies in the GAA. It was the case in 2024. They were allocated about 40 billion in the 2024 GAA. And in 2025, the executive proposed, I think, in the NEF of about 80 billion in subsidies. So the reason, Your Honor, is because consistently the government, when DOF computed or evaluated the fund balance, the national government has demonstrated the capacity, the willingness to continuously provide subsidies to PhilHealth. And of course, the mechanism in Section 37, the last paragraph, says that the DOH and PhilHealth can provide the necessaries, can request the subsidies to help it achieve the goals of the Universal Healthcare Act. So it's a continuous flow, Your Honor.
Yes, precisely. So the fact that PhilHealth could not spend this amount for benefits and the national government will take this amount to fund unprogrammed expenditures, the fault is on PhilHealth for not spending this. It is not for the government to take this away and for PhilHealth to expand its programs so that the subsidies that were allocated by government for healthcare should not be taken away. Instead of directing the DOF, the national government, directing PhilHealth, oy PhilHealth, gastusin niyo ito para sa taong bayan, kinuha ninyo at binigay sa iba. This is precisely the meat of this case. So, why is PhilHealth therefore not expanding their benefits and programs that would approximate the subsidies that were given to them to answer for the health benefits of our people?
Your Honor, if I may. So this is, of course, based on the discussions with management and my experience in the deliberation of the board. But fundamentally, PhilHealth faces a structural absorptive capacity issue. What does that mean? The benefits, expansion of benefits is only one part of the equation. To accomplish the objectives of the Universal Healthcare Act, we need, the national government also needs to address what we term as the supply side constraints, supply side issues. So ano po ba ito, Your Honor? So number one, the insufficiency of the compensation for our healthcare workers or healthcare professionals. Number two, hospitals, healthcare facilities. Even if there is even if benefit expansions occur, if there is no hospital within the vicinity of a specific beneficiary, particularly an indigent beneficiary, then they will not be able to avail of these expanded benefits. So there needs to be the supply side constraints. And of course, in addition to the direct health, supply side health constraints, so yung hospitals po, yung medical equipment, and of course the personnel, the health care workers, you also have the WHO also has this term called the social determinants of health. So those are the other things. Those are the other things that help improve health outcomes. So what are these?
These things that you mentioned, absorptive capacity, the supply side issues, this can also be addressed by government. You're getting money from PhilHealth and telling us that PhilHealth lacks absorptive capacity. But the reason why it lacks absorptive capacity, because it doesn't get full support from government, not only addressing expanding benefit, but also supply side requirements. So you're just providing an excuse to get this money out of PhilHealth. No, when you speak of limitations in hospitals, I mean, you can inquire from our people, repeated complaints that they cannot even get PhilHealth benefits. And if they get PhilHealth benefits, it's so low that it cannot even cover substantially the amount expenses or medical expenses. So people will not understand the issue of absorptive capacity or supply side demand or requirements. So on the issue of why do you need to take this amount if the blame should be on PhilHealth because it could not provide for these benefits?
Your Honor, if I may. So after the order or the instruction to return the 89.9 billion, we have seen last year that PhilHealth has significantly accelerated the pace of benefit expansion, and they will continue to provide more benefits this year. So the issue in terms of the expansion of benefits is steadily being addressed.
Precisely, that PhilHealth increases benefits because of public criticism arising from this, trying to get the 89.9 billion. They are now probably justifying, oh, we can do this. In fact, we're increasing the amount. Without public backlash, probably, I don't know if PhilHealth will increase its benefits.
That may be so, Your Honor, but all the same, I think for the Department of Finance, for the economic managers, what matters to us is the expansion of benefits. If there must be a stick that must be presented together with the carrot, then we shall, I think we are happy if we see more benefits for the Filipino people.
Okay. Now, let us now go to Juan. the collection, the subsidy. The subsidy that were given to PhilHealth were taken from the taxes, as mentioned earlier by Justice Ami, taxes from PAGCOR, etc. Now, when the budget for PhilHealth subsidy from government, how do you compute the proposal of PhilHealth for subsidy from government? Let us say for 2024, so may budget call noong 2023. PhilHealth will have to prepare a budget, a request. For purposes of determining the subsidy that will be contributed by the government, what is your basis in determining the subsidy? Proposal to be submitted to the Office of the President for NEP.
Your Honor, if I may, I believe the exact process would be most familiar to DBM, but if you can allow me my basic understanding of the process. So PhilHealth during the budget deliberation period, they submit a proposed budget, and this proposed budget includes, number one, the number of beneficiaries.
No, initially, sa NEP pa lang. For purposes of preparing the NEP, the PhilHealth will submit to the Office of the President a budget. Part of that budget is the amount of subsidy for indirect contributors. How much do you ask for, and what was the basis for this amount?
Your Honor, if I may, I'm not familiar on the exact amount, but in terms of the process, I know to the best of my knowledge, the proposal of PhilHealth is put together with with DOH. So it's the DOH budget submitted to DBM for evaluation.
No, the reason why I ask this, we have laws that allocate funds to answer for the subsidy of government to PhilHealth. Mentioned earlier, syntaxes, etc., etc. Now, do you know the actual collection of government corresponding to these taxes? And if you have computed this amount, do this equal to the amount PhilHealth requested Office of the President for purposes of subsidy for indirect contributors?
Your Honor, I do not have with me the exact certifications from the syntax
I need to get an
allocation.
answer to this because this is in relation to the question of a special fund. Yung collection ng gobyerno sa mga taxes, PAGCOR, etc., for the year, ito rin ba ang hiningi ng PhilHealth sa Office ng President para doon sa subsidy ng indirect contributors? For me, it should be the same amount.
I believe our colleagues from PhilHealth or probably DOH would be in a better position to answer this on the exact amounts, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Assistant Secretary Albert Domingo from the Department of Health.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. To the question on how the PhilHealth computes its request for a budget, it does not refer to the computation on the syntax allocation. Instead, it counts the number of members based on a database. There is a database on indirect members, and then it generates a list. It enumerates the number. The exact number escapes me now, but this is the process. And then that number is submitted, multiplied by a factor, which is the premium rate, and then it is submitted to the Department of Budget
therefore,
Management.
when you come up with your budget request for the subsidy, you don't actually consider the taxes being collected that Congress passed for purposes of subsidy for indirect contributors.
That is correct, Your Honor. The budget is computed based on the need.
So they're not following the law? You're not observing what the law requires?
Your Honor, budget principles require that it's needs-based. If we will follow it based on the projected fund ceiling or availability, it might not match certain needs.
Yes, I agree. It's based on needs. But the problem there is PhilHealth limits the funding so that you don't address the needs, the health needs of the Filipino people. If you increase budget 200%, and I don't think the Filipino would not avail of that. You define your own limits. The Congress allocates budget or collects taxes, provides for collection of taxes to answer for the subsidy of PhilHealth for indirect contributors. Now, when you request money for subsidy, ang ibig mong sabihin, hindi mo papakailam yun? Hindi mo naiintindihin yun? Gagawa ka ng sarili mong formula because you have limited understanding there's a limited need of our people for health.
Your Honor, the current administration agrees with your observation, which is why this particular case under litigation has been the signal it has been using to increase the benefits. Ang tagal na po, 10 taon.
So therefore, if the current administration recognizes that, very thank you. And therefore, they should bring back the money back to PhilHealth.
Your Honor, the reason why the administration recognized it because for the longest time, the corporation has thought it will always get money because of the guarantee of the sin
Oh,
tax.
precisely, whatever it would be. Whatever is that. As long as the government recognizes now, it is now incumbent on the part of the government to return the 60 billion that was transmitted already because it recognized now. Hindi lang na-recognize probably before, ngayon na-recognize na. So therefore, when you recognize it, you should return it. What do you think?
Your Honor, if it pleases the court, Section 58, the sovereign guarantee, even without this maneuver of the 89.9, government can and always will increase the benefits. But the signal, Your Honor, if it pleases the court, that this litigation gave is a strong signal for it to do so.
So the people should now be satisfied by a strong signal from the administration.
Your Honor, it's not necessarily the administration. It is the fact that the reserves, the amounts.
You said the government.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So a strong signal from the government to help PhilHealth and expand benefit should now be enough for our people to rely on.
This is the start, Your Honor. If the case is allowed to proceed, if the transfer is allowed to proceed, it is a use it or lose it signal, which all national government agencies have, so that we will use our funds. GOCCs like PhilHealth do not have that signal, and they think, at least before the current CEO or the current administration, they think that just because there is an earmark, whether hard or soft, that they will get the money, and there is no stimulus for them to actually increase the benefits.
When you prepare this budget of yours for subsidy, why did you not consider the collection made by government, by BIR, on the sin taxes? What was the reason behind that?
Your Honor, mathematically, it's the premium rate. The way that the premium rate is determined, unfortunately, is not actuarially fair. It is not based on the spread of benefits that is due the Filipino people. Kulang po talaga yung binabayad ng PhilHealth. 10% lamang po in 2024. Kaya dapat po talaga taasan. And mathematically, the only way to do this is to increase the benefit packages, which we are doing now.
But the government collected taxes already, representing supposedly the subsidy. Why would government not transmit everything to PhilHealth as originally intended?
That is correct, Your Honor. Unfortunately, the receptacle to which this money can be transmitted cannot handle the amount of money because it's too small.
So if it is correct, and the reason why it was not transmitted because of administrative matters or hindrances, you agree that this should go to PhilHealth. It's a matter of spending it. So therefore, when government merely allocated this amount, probably substantially lower from the taxes that were collected, all of the balance should be given to PhilHealth this year and prior years. It's just a matter of administrative absorption. Hindi lang kaya gastusin ng PhilHealth. Kung hindi kaya gastusin ng PhilHealth, ibigay sa PhilHealth at utusan ng PhilHealth, oy, taasan ninyo ang benefits nyo. Hoy, mag-hire kayo ng mga tao ninyo para magastos ito para sa health ng ating tao.
Your Honor, if I may, 3 presidente na po ng Republika ang dumaan simula noong 2013 hanggang 2023. At siguro mahigit 10 mga presidente ng korporasyon. Ganun po lagi ang utos pero hindi po nangyayari until now.
Probably it's time to overhaul PhilHealth and change the board for not complying what the law requires. Hindi kasalanan ng tao yan. For not availing all of these benefits. Apparently from your own words, kasalanan niya ng administrasyon, this administration, last administration, or the previous administration. At kasalanan niya ng PhilHealth Board. Huwag natin pahirapan yung tao because nandyan naman yung pera. The money is there, government actually collected this, and you're not giving it to PhilHealth to serve as health benefits for our people.
If I may, Your Honor, in fact, nung una pong oral arguments, iba po yung PCEO na humarap sa korting ito. At nung ikalawang oral arguments, ganun ho kabilis, iba na ho uli yung humarap na CEO. Kino-correct na po.
Okay, so that's maybe a good point from PhilHealth, but we cannot close our eyes for the past years na hindi nabigay in benefits. So in that case, maybe PhilHealth can already request the President to return the money, the 60 billion that were transmitted to PhilHealth, to the government for anchor program funds. Ibalik na yan sa PhilHealth, and PhilHealth to expand its benefits, hire more people to answer for the needs of the health of our people. That will be all, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Ko.
Your Honor, please, if I may raise a factual matter, Your Honor. I'd like the court to know that PhilHealth has not been actually disadvantaged by its not demanding the allocation from the syntax law. Because in fact, I have here the numbers, Your Honor. From 2013 to 2021, PhilHealth has actually been receiving subsidy from the GAA more than what it would have received under its allocation attributed from syntaxes, Your Honor. For instance, in 2014, the PhilHealth allocation attributed from syntax is only 22.71 million. But the total PhilHealth subsidy was 35.34. So let us say in 2021, PhilHealth allocation attributed from syntaxes was 16.92, and the total PhilHealth subsidy was 80.24. So there is no truth, Your Honor, to the claim that yes, that's what I have here, Your Honors.
So, but you mentioned only syntaxes, but there are other sources of the subsidy aside from PAGCOR and etc. So when you total this, I would think it should be more than the subsidy because
there is
government has limited funds. Kung ito lang ang collection under the law for subsidy, I doubt the government will allocate additional funds. So kukuha lang yan dun sa funds allocated under the law, whether PAGCOR, whether syntaxes, at dun lang kukunin yan. It could never be more than because government has limited resources. Saan niya kukunin yung balance?
These are numbers that I got from from our Bureau of Treasury, Your Honors. And by the way, if I may mention, there is actually an interagency committee composed of the Department of Budget and Management, Department of Finance, Department of Health, PAGCOR, PCSO, and the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, created under Joint Circular number 001/2022, where they monitor the allocations for PhilHealth from the syntaxes, from PAGCOR and the PCSO. I would think that they make
Counsel, in order to settle this matter,
Yes, Your Honor.
can you please submit to the court
Yun.
the collection made by government under
Section
the syntaxes, the PAGCOR, the PCSO, vis-a-vis the subsidy given by government. Doon natin makikita, we can see there if actually the amount collected is lower than the subsidy given to
we
government.
will do that,
To PhilHealth.
Your Honor.
Can you please
And-
submit that
yes.
for the past 5 years?
And if I can also plead, Your Honor, for the court to be more understanding of PhilHealth for its its inability. I think what it was referred to as lack of absorptive capacity earlier, because we must understand, Your Honor, that the PhilHealth funds are not like discretionary funds. They can only be spent after PhilHealth has adopted the programs, goes through a process of developing adjustment to benefit packages.
Basta pwedeng gastos.
Thank you, Counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Justice Ko.
Thank you, Chief.
May we call Justice Japardi Mampao for his interpellation. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chief. May I ask the counsels for petitioners in GR numbers 274, 778, and 276-233 to answer these questions on procedural issues.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon. Under Article 8, Section 5, Paragraph 2, Subparagraph E of the Constitution, the Supreme Court exercises original jurisdiction over cases in which only a question of, in which only an error or question of law is involved. Relatedly, the Supreme Court previously decreed that funds levied for special purpose can only be paid out for such purpose. This was the ruling of the court in the case of PCGG versus Cocopet, jar number 147-062, promulgated on December 14, 2001. In this case, the special fund in question is the 80% allocation from sin tax collections. However, it cannot be gainsaid that PhilHealth funds, particularly those determined as fund balance, do not exclusively come from the sin tax collections. In this regard, would not your petition involve a question of fact that would require the court to receive evidence to determine the portion of that fund balance of PhilHealth that pertains to the government subsidies from sin tax collections?
The question is
if this is a factual issue, Your Honor. Well, we submit, Your Honor, that this is a legal issue of whether or not the reserve funds under the GAA should be transferred contrary to the express provisions, Your Honor, of the Universal Health Act that reserve funds should not be transferred back to the National Treasury.
You
Your Honor.
mean to tell us that such portion of the PhilHealth fund balance can be determined from that 80% allocation from sin taxes without presenting any evidence?
Your
to
Honor,
that effect?
the express provisions of the GAA, Your Honor, refers to reserve funds, Your Honor, and the express provisions also of the Universal Health Code refers to reserve funds. So we are of the opinion, Your Honor, we submit, Your Honor, that these contrary opinions, these contrary rights, Your Honor, is the actual case or constitutional case in question, Your Honor, that the provision is contrary to law, contrary to the Constitution, also that the transfer also of the fund authorizing the Department of Finance to transfer is likewise unconstitutional because only the Constitution only allows the President, the head of the legislature, the chief, and the constitutional bodies to transfer reserve funds from one department to the other, Your Honor.
Are you in effect invoking the ruling of the court in the case of Samar versus the OTC, wherein the court emphatically declared that the determinative test in raising a petition before the court is that it must raise a question of law?
Yes, Your Honor, part of it is a question of law and the actual case in controversy, Your Honor. In such case, the actual case in controversy, in this case, Your Honor, as stated, is the conflict of rights between the Constitution alleged by the executive and the legislature to transfer funds vis-a-vis the express provision of the Constitution limiting the transfer of funds to certain individuals, and also of the express provisions of the law prohibiting such transfer of reserve funds back to the Treasury.
Do you consider this case before this court as one of transcendental or paramount importance?
Yes, Your Honor, we submit that in our pleadings, Your Honor, that it is of transcendental importance and that the transcendental importance have given due course by this honorable court in a number of cases. And the health and welfare of the people, Your Honor, the transcendental importance of the basic right to health has been actually passed upon by this court in the case of Imbong, Your Honor.
May I now ask you substantive questions? Petitioners in GR numbers 274, 778, and 276, 233 argue that Section 1, Paragraph D of the 2024 General Appropriation Act and the Department of Finance Circular 003-2024 are unconstitutional for being violative of the constitutional right to health enshrined in two constitutional provisions. Article 2, Section 15, which states that its state shall protect and promote the right to health of the people and instill health consciousness among them. The second one is Article 13, Section 11, which provides that the state shall adopt an integrated and comprehensive approach to health, which shall endeavor to make essential goods, health, and other social services available to the people, to all the people at an affordable cost. In the landmark case of Embong versus Ochoa, year number 204819, promulgated on April 8, 2014, the Supreme Court categorically declared this as self-executing provisions, and there is no need for legislation to implement the same. Still and all, it bears noting that the so-called threat to the right to health is rooted in the actions of both Congress and the Department of Finance that appear to stymie or impede the timely implementation of the universal health care system. Does the characterization of the constitutional right to health as self-executing provision mean that Congress would no longer have discretion to determine how it should promote the same?
Your Honor, the express provisions of the Universal Health Care Law is very clear, Your Honor. The specific amounts to be given to the health care is basically outlined in the Universal Health Care Law, such as already mentioned, taxes, PABCOR, PCSO. That is not for the Congress to decide, Your Honor. That has already been passed. Second, Your Honor, the provisions of the Universal Health Care Act, Your Honor, is very clear as to the benefits and provisions and how the reserve fund would be spent should there be any excess, if any. In addition, Your Honor, we also agree that the GAA, contrary to even with the DOF circular, is again contrary to law and does not go with the intent of the Constitution for as you said, automatic implementation of health care for the Filipino people. So we submit, Your Honor, that again, even without the law, it is automatically given, but with the implementation of the law for both the universal health care, then it not only automatically gives it, but the specific provisions and amounts are very clear and should be followed, Your Honor.
Though these constitutional provisions necessarily entail the implementation of the universal health care system such that any threat thereto can be deemed violation of rights or the Constitution.
Your Honor, if I may, the Universal Health Care Act was primarily passed in pursuit of these constitutional mandates. Aside from the Universal Health Care Act, there are actually other laws that were passed to so that these constitutional mandates are met. Your Honor, while the language of the Universal Health Care Act is clear, we also take note, Your Honor, that what the government did by removing or getting again the money they originally gave as subsidy for premium contributions of the indirect contributors, Your Honor, is a retrogressive measure, which under, and I believe was mentioned earlier, under the WHO and the UN documents, is actually, Your Honor, a violation of the right to health.
Let's talk about PhilHealth funds. Do you adopt the postulation that PhilHealth funds are public funds?
Your Honor, no, the funds that goes through PhilHealth, Your Honor, even the premiums from the indirect contributors actually loses its character as a subsidy, Your Honor, precisely because of the social insurance scheme wherein there will only become one fund. And this fund will be used primarily for health services or for the health needs of the people, Your Honor. Despite the fact, Your Honor, that the indirect contributors' premiums are paid for by the government, there is a social, I'm sorry, Your Honor, when the original PhilHealth law, which was Republic Act 7875, was first amended in 2013, I believe. There was a clear mandate that there is a social contract between the government and the people, wherein the government will have to pay for the premiums of those who cannot afford to pay, while those who have the capacity to pay pays for their own premium. And the government, by removing the at least 60 billion, Your Honor, as of this date, the 60 billion removed by the government from the indirect funds are actually a violation of the one fund policy that is the basic concept of a social health insurance, Your Honor.
Do you recall the authoritative definition of public funds? The Supreme Court had occasion to define public funds in the case of Confederation of Coconut Farmers Organizations of the Philippines, Inc. versus Aquino III, CR number 217-965, promulgated on August 8, 2017. There, the court defined public funds, and let's check whether your theory is correct. Now, I will define public funds in the manner the court defined the same. Public funds are monies belonging to the state or to any political subdivision of the state, more specifically taxes, customs duties, and monies raised by operation of law for the support of the government or for the discharge of its obligations. Do you admit that these PhilHealth funds may come from taxes?
Your Honor, there are taxes levied for the indirect contributors. We agree, Your Honor. However, there are also private funds coming from contributors from private entities, such as everybody here in this room, Your Honor. And the one fund concept would put it into, I would say, a trust fund, Your Honor, contrary to a public fund strictly stated by the Honorable Justice, Your Honor.
Under Republic Act 10351, otherwise known as the Syntax Law, it provides that 80% of the syntax collection of the balance, the remaining balance that may be derived from syntax collections derived from this act shall be allocated for universal health care under the National Health Insurance Program. So how do you make sure that you insist that PhilHealth funds do not be that qualify for the public funds?
I can Your Honor, this is in a more of a phase fund. This is a mingling fund between the public and private funds, Your Honor. It's not only private funds source from taxes, but this is actually source from private members, Your Honor, private individuals, giving their taxes and their contributions, Your Honor. And if I may, Your Honor, I just like to farmers will persist through the years, contributing the successors funds at the end if there's any fund. Fund as the government being PhilHealth only a trustee in possession of the trust fund given by the beneficiaries and the contributors for PhilHealth.
Now let's talk about special fund. The reserve fund mentioned in Section 11 of Republic Act 11223, is Universal Health Care Act. Can you consider that as a special fund?
Yes, Your Honor. It is a special fund, Your Honor, because it is for a special purpose.
The fund that is derived from the sin tax collections, will that qualify as a special fund?
Yes, Your Honor, because under the Republic Act 11346, which amended Republic Act 10351, the law specifically mentioned that these funds, the percentage, the 80% of the total collections must be used exclusively for PhilHealth, for universal health care under the PhilHealth.
Do you recall or are you aware of a jurisprudential ruling regarding special fund? I'm asking about decision of the court.
I believe, Your Honor, the mention earlier about the case of COCOFED versus
Yes.
Aquino discusses the special fund, Your
Although
Honor.
that pertains to Coco levy funds. Now, what's the ruling of the court in that case? Coco levy funds, according to the Supreme Court, are special funds allocated for a special purpose and cannot be used for other purpose other than for the benefit of the coconut farmers or for the development of the coconut industry. That's the ruling of the court. Can you apply that to this case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.